Yeah, there we go.
Alrighty, we'll start this Finance Committee meeting on February 28th. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Chairman Clausen. Our first document in front of us is the sales tax revenue report for 2017. We have, just so you know, in the biennial budget, we do have it spread out over the 2-year period. So, but we are showing here 2017. You can see that sales tax is up over our estimation, keeping in line with our budgeting practice. So about 3.86% over in the first 2 months of January and February. So a total of about $30,000 over what we projected, and the total collection to date is $813,000. The larger number in February, of course, is part of your 60 days that rolls out in your Christmas shopping period of time. And as you can see, it keeps pretty much in track of our historical collections to date. So that's good news.
Yeah,
That's
very good news.
And then we've
I
got
don't like your spreadsheet though, where it shows for the year we've got a
Right.
significant deficit.
Right, and the reason for that is yesterday about 4 o'clock we started looking at whether we were going to do 24 months or 12 months.
Yeah.
So the
I'm
formula.
glad you kept it at 12 with this
Yeah.
one.
So we didn't get the formulas in there, and I just, quite frankly, ran out of time.
Yeah.
And said as long as we had the 3.86%, that was going to carry us forward. But we'll get that back to the format that it was prior. We've got our 2016, 2017 recollections. You can see that we, make that adjustment in January according to instructions of the auditor's office. So our first real collection there is in February of $24,000, which is pretty much on par with last year. So that's how we start out there. We did have a sale that the mayor talked about yesterday.
$38 million sale, so $670,000 in REIT here in about 60 days.
Ours is 0.5% of the sale price.
That's 1.78.
That's total county.
Oh,
That's
okay.
for the full county. Our portion's the 0.25%.
Okay, so we're not getting 600,000.
No, the whole real estate excise tax collected, but from the what is it? It's a seller's cost.
Yeah.
Is the amount due? It's 1.73. County gets a portion of that.
Well, county gets a bigger portion then.
Right. I think the state gets a portion. I think I don't have it to memory, but the original tax was a 1% that went to the state. Then they added certain options that could be added, 0.25% and 0.25% to the cities, and then there's another 2.23%. I'm not sure where that goes.
We get 190.
That's right, and split between the two. So
Is that-
a large amount of money.
Is that the county share? Is part of that what goes for affordable housing or homelessness? That's a different
That's a filing fee on top of it.
filing fee. Okay.
That's this $45 filing fee that they're talking about that expires this year.
Right.
And they're talking about renewing that, and they're talking about adding a $50 piece, another 50 to that could go to local government.
Who's talking?
State.
And I thought,
There's a bill.
right, there's a bill.
And then we just show our January cash flows in our amount. And as you know, through the years, Sean might not recognize it as others. We try to keep. We need $750,000 in the general fund just for cash flow purposes. We can't go below that, and then we have money over and above that. And I'll talk about those things in a little bit. So is there any questions about the sales tax and the real estate excise tax that we should get in about 60 days? We'll see that significant amount of money at nearly $200,000.
I wish we were getting the 6.
Yeah, when we talked about that yesterday, I didn't realize how you did the math.
Maybe they'll flip it in 60 days.
Then 90 days later, ask for it back.
Okay,
We've gone to the format, as we talked last fall, of looking actually at cash and expended investments to show you where the cash is in the various funds. There again, you can see our current expense fund set out there, which includes the current expense city street fund and the stabilization fund. We've got our other named funds there, down through the special revenue funds, our capital project funds, water sewer funds, storm drainage funds, and the trust and agency funds, which are a lesser amount, mainly made up of the wastewater treatment facility fee.
Is this as of December 31st, or is this as of January? It's year 2017.
Yeah, it's up to date. I think it is.
As of yes,
yeah,
it's a snapshot in time. Okay.
Right, exactly. And then also on our fund balance reserves, and that's the REIT money, which is broken down into REIT 1 and REIT 2. And then, as you can see, REIT 1's the less restrictive. That's why there's
lots in it.
less in it. And then, of course, we've got our McCormick Woods transportation dollars, our parks, McCormick Woods Parks, Bayside, Platte, and then the transportation. Benefit district. I think that's right.
I don't know that we've got anything in the TBD
Right.
yet.
Well, we-
That's
we have
probably
some.
impact fees.
Traffic impact.
Yeah, some of that, but I'm probably wrong on that transportation. I'd have to go back and read the code on that.
I did pay that fee last
Yeah,
week.
Yeah, I did
I
too.
paid it a 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. There's a lag in that one
Right.
too, and it just
Yeah.
started.
So will that be another account that you put on here?
Yeah, and the impact fee fund. We did get about $214 at the end of the year for that. Somebody had started to collect it early and transmit it to the state. I'll double check that and get back
Yeah,
to
but
you.
it's
I'll
not
give you an
100
update.
160 though. We wouldn't have 160 yet.
Right,
Hard caps.
let me go back and pull, I'll send you an email and clarify that, because I don't recall. So, then the other action up for bid here on the Price is Right is, I'm gonna have at 8 o'clock, if it's all right, I'm gonna have Steve Robert and Vince Tucker come in, and we're gonna go through the Sitel closeout and wrap that up. So
Okay.
we'll just, if it's all right, we'll wait till 8 o'clock when they
Sure.
come in. So I want to just give you an update on the natural gas franchise fee. And some notes on that, because it's being handled by Brandy and Sharon Cates and Corey Pearson. They've contacted Cascade Natural Gas. So there's a couple things they're working on, and they're waiting to hear back from Cascade Natural Gas. You no longer use the Seattle office, you use a regional office now in this. So the question was, there has to be given reasonable notice in the statute. So they've reached out to Cascade Natural Gas and asked them what their definition of reasonable notice is, so we get that right when we do the resolution, which is ordinance is in draft form now. It's going to be sent to Cascade Natural Gas, and they're going to look it over as well. That's in the process, working with the attorney. The other thing is that we've reached out to Cascade Natural Gas, asked them if there is a good effective date that they would want to put it onto their billing cycle. Now, we were operating under the assumption that you could only start this January 1st. But we've learned that that's only the case when we went back and read the statutes. That's in the case if you were going to raise it over 6%. So Cascade does have the ability to, so we told them, hey, if it makes a difference to you, what would that be to work this in? So we're just waiting to hear from that. So the council would make a decision whether to have that take place, in summer fall or next year.
Because the budget assumption was 6%, not, which was matching the electric utility.
Right, and it envisioned starting at January 1st.
This year.
No, 2018.
Yeah, we thought, but see, if you want to really collect it for the full 12 months, then we need to start to collect it like all fees, about 60 days in advance.
I
To
think
get,
starting in December would be a good time, because that's when gas bills are typically the lowest.
yeah.
Say
So,
it again?
They're higher in the winter.
Well, I know, but when you implement an additional tax, it will be easier to accept because your gas bills are lower.
Okay, so that would be the summer.
That
months.
would be the summer
what I
months.
said.
No, you said winter.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I meant to implement in the summer.
Correct.
Sorry.
That's what
That's why we all went.
Huh?
I understand.
It's not what I said, it's what I meant.
So I agree, if there was a possibility that we could start July 1, that seems to me it would be optimal for
Yeah.
us.
So and like I say, we've said to them what month
Right.
works in, so
July, August.
when we get this rolling, we'll just move right into it.
Correct.
Okay. And then also we've asked how many customers are actually in, this was Brandy's idea, find out how many customers actually we had, so to get the community of who we're impacting. So they're gonna come back with that number. Well, we've asked for that, and they've said okay to looking that up.
1,
1, 2, 3?
4.
Wow, that's more than I thought.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So the goal is to have this on the last meeting of March, is our goal. So that is well on the way of happening. The other thing I wanted to mention was budget amendments. And I want to take some time to get into a chart that's probably a little bit more busy than what you probably like to see. But it's, oh, I'm sorry, there we go, lady. And this, remember last fall when I said we were going to go back on the biennial budget and really find out exactly, true up our accounts. So that's what this exercise really was. And it captured a couple things. It captured the 2% that we usually budget low on revenue and under budget. It captures that. A large portion of it is projects that were started that didn't actually get to in 2016 that still rolled over. Some such as the 720 building hasn't been budgeted yet. That's out to bid or will be shortly, so we'll have to do that. So that is cash in here as well. So what this shows you is the different funds. The number on the right is the amount that we, and that first one where it says current expense, $609,650. That's the estimation of the amount of cash that we didn't budget in beginning fund balance for 2017. That was really the exercise then to say what is the true cash. And as I mentioned, if you're on an annual budget, we would just naturally through our process absorb this into our July estimation of revenues and ending cash balance in an annual year. We wouldn't really be back looking at it as much because you'd be hearing about it starting in September. We would have just rolled it over and said, here's your beginning cash to start. Who would have seen it really would have been the mayor, as the mayor writes the mayor's preliminary budget, would have reached out and taken that cash to start that budget process. But where we have this 2-year period, my concern is, and I've heard from my colleagues that have done this, is if we don't do this now, then when you get to do your mid-biennial review, you're really not going to have a real sense, did we do well over the first half of the first part of the budget, or where did this cash really come from? So we've identified this now to say here's a true beginning cash. Now of that $609,000, what finance would propose is to strengthen the budget as it's written now and really get to the position that strengthens the creditworthiness of the city and gives you the greatest flexibility when you do Tremont. So we've got this opportunity. So instead of leaving it in fund balance, in the general fund, put it into the other funds that strengthens the city's position. Now, the amount that goes for the Tremont widening project, that money that makes that payment, a partial payment in 2017 and a full payment in 2018 for the project, is outside of these numbers. In other words, it's already earmarked in the fund balance to make those payments, that you don't have to come up with the payment at this point. We did that as part of that budget process and wrote this supplemental.
Which we haven't acted on yet.
That's correct. That'll be passed at the time that I'm gonna try to do it all at the same time that you accept the bids. Pass the budget ordinance, pass the bond ordinance to sell the bonds, as we discussed the other night, and then Mark would bring forward the contract for the construction. So we'd do that simultaneously as one big body of work. That way it would be captured. So under current expense there, the 609,000, what we would propose is adding an additional amount to the street fund of $212,500. Well, now let me see how I got this figured out. I've got, we would start the street, of the $609,000, we would, there's transfers in there and that type of thing. I don't want to get into we don't need to get into the details, but we would end the 2018, December 31st, 2018 of $854,110 at the end of 2018. And we need $750,000 for cash flow purposes. Then we would, for street, we would distribute $212,500. How did I went over this last night. The distribution would be $609,500 is what we start with. We end up with $854,110 in current expense at the end of the period. For street, we would end up with $695,693, and then stabilization, we would move $100,000 into the stabilization. So we would end up with a stabilization amount at the end of the nearly $1 million, $911,900. So of this,
Let me ask a question because my eyes are crossed right here so early. So the 609 is essentially additional funds that was carried over from the previous year. So they're not programmed per se.
That's right, and they weren't budgeted as fund balance.
Correct.
Right.
So what you're proposing to do then is underneath that 609, there's a series of transfers to the different
Yes.
fund balances. So at the end of the day, at the end of 18, we'll have an ending fund balance of 854.
Right. The fine print is the transfer
Yeah,
amounts.
okay.
Right.
So then likewise, that carries through to these other,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, you said it better than I did.
I don't know, I just have to connect the dots sometimes, so.
So in the middle of the page, at the bottom of each one of these categories is the fund balance as of,
At the end of
at
18.
18, estimated at 18.
Yeah.
Right, right. So what that does is that strengthens all your other funds and all your other programs for the biennial budget. The only one that probably is, the stabilization is somewhat discretionary. You wouldn't have to do that, but it does strengthen your position overall to have $1 million, getting you closer to the $1.4 million goal.
That's our target.
Right, and it's a one-time shot that you have the ability to do it. So that's why I thought that would strengthen the position.
I'm still confused. if you take the and I didn't bring a calculator, if you take the 609
Mhm.
and you transfer all of these,
Some
Here.
amounts, right.
that's going to increase that fund balance to 854.
No, that just was, I added that in there to just show you what your ending cash balance would be in 2018.
After you made these transfers? Or
Out.
those,
These are transfers out from the 609,000.
There's a balance, an estimated balance there currently,
correct,
and then you take the 609 and you do all this in and out stuff that he has proposed, add it to the current, and in 2018, you're gonna end up with the 854.
okay, so the numbers that you have under the current expense,
Mhm.
under that first one, they do not relate to any of these other
They
numbers?
do.
No, they do.
They do.
Some.
They bring the ending fund balance up.
Not all.
Not all.
No, but
So
like-
that's the question.
Like stabilizations in there, you see it
Transfer to street funds, for example, that gets
Right.
thrown into there.
So from the 609,000, a transfer to the street fund for projects brings up that ending balance in that fund in 2018.
So if
Correct.
you go down the street, you see the transfer from current expense, so that money is being put into that account.
Correct. Where did the other transfers come from that are not listed up here?
Some are like, over here at, Prospect Street, we didn't do, we had budget authority and we didn't get the work done. So
So that's
It-
this
it-
110.
it comes back in.
So you've got it coming in and,
Well, we didn't.
As of 1/1.
I didn't go
Okay.
back and say, we didn't do this, so here's the money. This is just the cash. This is an exercise in what's your beginning true beginning
Well, it
cash.
is.
Wouldn't that-
It's right here, at 302, City Hall Annex 720, there's 110 right there,
correct.
not completed. So that's coming back in. So
It's also up there under 109. So is, what's up there under 109, that
What-
total REIT is,
You can't.
this down
spend-
here is breaking it out for
Yeah, you
and
can't
that's the same
spend,
rate.
the REIT money is moved to the capital projects fund to do the
Okay.
project. And if you, and so the transfer has to go into another fund.
Okay,
If you look at the gross total of all of these, it's like $2.8 million of revenue, but it's, every time you move from one fund to another, it becomes revenue to the other fund.
correct.
So it's not a direct correlation. You
Okay.
can be looking at the money twice here.
Okay,
But the money that you've identified and we'll use a current expense, that was funding that was over and above what you anticipated it to be at the end of the year. Some of that funding could be for revenues that came in stronger than we anticipated and/or projects that we anticipated doing that we didn't complete. So
It's
some
a-
of that would be included in there. It's
Right.
not new money, it's just.
some's new money, some's money that we
Well,
didn't
For
do.
example, is,
Yeah,
we just didn't do.
we didn't do. Yeah, there's a mix. And Alan's right. It's it isn't. It's it's accounting entries. There's debits and credits, and you're seeing the same dollars twice because it's coming out of a capital project and going back in. Come on, Steve. You're next.
Well, I understand most of that. It's just that some of it is just taking funding, that was left over because we didn't spend it, and some of it may be because of the
Revenues came in higher. Yeah.
And some of it may be, I'm assuming what I'm just said, is additional funds to complete projects, i.e. we have a REIT balance, but we want to take more out of the REIT balance than we anticipated to finish that project over at Prospect.
That would be a future.
Yeah, okay.
That would be because one, we had two things. One, we had 110 in the first bid we got. Little
No,
bid
I
we got was
understand why. It's just
125.
where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. It's clear as mud.
Well,
It's complex.
Like I said, it's, I didn't do a good job of explaining it, but it, and I apologize for that. There's a lot of numbers here. The takeaway is that of the 609,000 current expense, you would see a budget amendment that would take and spread that against those various funds to strengthen those funds. The other funds, 109, REIT, capital projects, those are more of a adjustment within the fund itself to
Right.
get back to what we thought our beginning balance was supposed to be, and then what the ending balance turns out to be at the end of 2018. Now, there was a couple of these funds that we actually had in capital projects, for example, we ended up lower than what we thought, so we've adjusted that with amounts. Now, the one piece I wanted to mention is the storm drainage utility fund, which actually has, at the end of 2018, would have $1.6 million in its operations. It's, and then of the storm capital facilities, that amount ends up at $945,000. So the storm drainage utility fund really should be looked at with the idea that you're going to have $2.5 million. Some of that is needed, of course, for cash flow purposes, which would be probably around the $600,000 range. But there is available resources there to, in the next biennial budget, to reach out and do projects.
If we were to identify a capital improvement or project and elect to hire a consultant to manage that project, can you take the consultant fees out of the operation, or is that considered a capital as well?
That I have to go back
All right,
and
if you-
look, but we're funding all the capital from the fees.
No, I understand, but you've got so much for operating and so much for
Right.
capital, and I'm wondering, can you use some of that operating to pay for help for Mark to get some of the capital improvements done?
Well, if you just hire a consultant,
I
let's
think
say,
so.
to do a project, the A&E, it's like we're doing on Tremont, the CACM is the same thing, we're hiring somebody to manage.
Right, but that generally gets charged to a capital budget, not an operating budget. That's what the question is.
I think all of the comes into
think
the
all money
operational
is-
budget, and as it's a part of our budgeting process, we're taking a
You set
sliver
this
out
up.
of it and setting it into capital. So it's an accounting entry.
You don't have a portion of the storm drainage fee as capital.
Isn't it like all
I'm talking
money's?
about taking money out of the accounts, is it appropriate? Now, we'll move it out
I-
of capital, or operations into capital to cover, whichever, just curious.
I think it's gonna, Mark and Zach and I probably need to sit down here in the next few months and make sure that we've got projects identified, and which we did previously, and make
Yeah.
sure that we've got our, designs done, so that when we come into the next biennial budget, we're picking a project or two to say, these are the things we're gonna go build.
Well, if you remember, the plan was minimum compliance, then get the utility up to where we have money, and now we've got the money to do the capital, and we've been active in the LIO. Unfortunately, we're very low on the list there. We did the downtown grant writing to try to get a grant for this downtown drainage system. We didn't get any of that funding, but that doesn't mean we can't move ahead with that project. And then we have
Designed it ourselves.
Right. Design it ourselves, and we have the Arnold culvert, which we could definitely design. And we could even start designing this estuary project. So those, and then Port Orchard Boulevard. Those are our four: Arnold culvert, the downtown drainage flooding issue.
I would probably say, the Arnold Culvert, because of our pathway, needs to
Right.
get rebuilt anyway.
Yeah, that's our
And
number
then
one.
downtown flooding is probably
Number
close
two.
behind it, so.
And that's how, and we've been pursuing those on the grant portion, but if we're ready to,
I think we need
At
to
least
pick
get it
one
designed.
and get a design done.
I would do Arnold. Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't want to wipe it's your guys' job, but mine was more of a question. Typically, when you get grant funding to fund a project, you can get the consultant's fees out of the grant as a part of the capital improvement. That's
Right.
why, basis for my question, so, okay.
Would there be any value with taking these assumptions and tying them back to here?
No,
No, not at all.
that's cash and you're looking at budget.
Right. But there wouldn't be any, just to make an assumption at the end of 18, where we
What-
might be considering all of these.
That's,
Well,
that's
it's a
what this,
different
that's
point
what
in
this,
time.
that's what this represents. Those are,
Right.
those are
Right.
assumptions.
Understand.
That's what this would look like in
If
2018.
if
This
it's
is-
reality.
This is today. This is what they would look like in 2018.
These would be all the ending balances?
Yeah, that's the
Mhm.
fund balance for that, for.
At the end of
for those.
2018.
Right.
See, it says
That's why it's
estimated fund balance.
ending.
That can't be right.
I
I mean, if we have a current balance of 1.76 million, it's gonna be down to 850,000?
Yeah. But you gotta remember, you're probably gonna end up with 6% under budget and 2% over revenues.
Okay.
But,
You
you know,
notice the same thing happens to the street fund.
now that gets trued up in the annual report. So when we do the annual report, which we'll have done for 2016 here in about by the end of May 31st, then those do get trued up to what the actuals were in the annual financial report.
Okay.
So
If
back
you want
to,
to talk about it more, we should.
I
But-
need to look at this.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
And come back, because I want to bring this forward and get it passed and true these up when we do the building, the 720 building. I wanna-
End of March, you gonna bring, or are you gonna bring this forward at the next meeting in March?
Yeah, I'd like to get this started and have it, have our first hearing in the first meeting in March.
Okay.
So,
Sean and I will both be
so
absent.
the plan at the end of the day is that this will all be done as part of the budget adjustment, which is timed to the Tremont kind of all simultaneously.
That's another step
that's
beyond
a,
this.
that's a different step.
Well, I understood that, but I thought you were
Oh.
gonna do budget adjustment, you're gonna do the bond issuance, and you're gonna do the opening of the contract all.
This is a
together.
separate budget amendment.
Yeah, this I just
Oh, I
want,
see, okay.
this I just want to true up, and I'd like to work with that. I want to true up the beginning cash balances as if it was January 1st.
I see, okay.
And that's what this exercise.
2017.
Yeah, January 1st. That's what
So
this
we would
really
be doing
represents.
that in the normal two-step process that we have to go
Right.
through.
Right, and I've got some other
And that just
cleanups.
straightens everything up.
Right, that's all that does, and then we'll go back and we actually adjust the budget, so when you see your budget reports, it's going to track through
Okay.
to the bottom line.
And by the time you get to the second reading, this is truing up the balances, and then we've got a couple of expenditures that we've identified early on this year, and by the second reading, we'll have the bid, we hope, that we want to accept for the building across the street. And then on top of the bid is some time for our guys to do the remainder of the improvements. So if using the 125 as the benchmark and 50 grand for our guys, I think we're looking at about 175 to finish the building over there. They were over there yesterday, and I knew about 40 or 50% of the windows had failed over there, and they said it's like 80% of the windows. And they said, let's not buy $1,600 worth of windows, let's buy $2,000 worth of windows and replace them all.
So Becca and I will set, after the meeting, we'll set a time to get together.
Okay.
So that I can understand. Thank you.
So let me just, before we turn to Sitel, I just wanted to touch on the Tremont Winding Project bond issuance update. Was there anything that came out of the meeting that was pretty straightforward what the process is? We'll continue to fine tune. The documents that we talked about the other night are pretty much put together. There's a few things I need to work with Mark, of course, to dial in on storm drainage portions and some other things, and we'll continue to refine that as we move forward. So,
Keep bond rates down for the next 90 days.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
that's always a question. So with that, I just we want to close out the Sitel. Thank you again for your support in that. It was a good process. Sitel did an excellent job, I believe. A fellow by the name of Whitney Hanson became their chief engineer for us, and he was an excellent individual to communicate with. And we satisfied all that we had set out to do as far as the overall project goes. The phase for management is to move now into the relationship where we have contracted in that original contract to have them be the help desk available. And there's been a contact with the principals on that end of the operation of Sitel, and there'll be a meeting that's in the process of being put together now with them to work out those different issues. So the help desk would be someone we can call them. They know the equipment. Also, a portion of that is that they will monitor off-site our operation as far as the servers and the like. So we'll enter into that as well. So I'd like to once we get that, I'll report how that moves along, not in a lot of detail, but that we get that in place, and then set up some kind of routine where we would reach out to them every so many months, even if we didn't have any reason. It's always nice to pick up, I found in my career, pick up the phone and say, are you still there on the other end? And or if they give you a dial number, to actually dial it in and say, here's who I am and who's on the other end. You can learn a lot there. And so anyway, that's a good thing. So happy to report it's about $30,000, $35,000 under budget. We got everything that we needed to do. Rob and I are going to meet with the county again and kind of go over our ending as well, because we do have a relationship with them. And Rob and I will do a closeout with the IT staff here as well over the next couple weeks. But for all practical purposes, we're finished. So I want to introduce Vince Tucker, who you know, and then Steve Havert, and our newer member to the IT department, and they're going to talk to about one, kind of the legacy system and where we are today. Vince is going to speak to that, and Steve's going to talk about kind of some of the things that we have on the horizon and where we're going to move from there, because we're going to have an opportunity now to go back and pick up some things that we haven't had the opportunity to really work on. And Steve will talk about that in a minute. But Vince.
Well, thank you. Thanks to Alan and everyone. Basically, the legacy systems, we've had a tough time. We've gone through several server failures in the last few years. We can go back and say LIS put us offline for 5 days when that server died. It was a 10-year-old server, so it was struggling to keep it alive in the first place. We had a backup server fail. You fortunately, thankfully, allowed me to replace it almost instantly, but we were 3 days down without backups. Kind of a scary thing. And then, of course, recently we've had our email server start giving us grief as well. So we lost a day of email service. Most of this came from servers that are anywhere from 3 to 11 years old. And this equipment, servers are just never asked to go much beyond a 6-year period. That's about as far as you dare push them. And we nursed them along. We got our money's worth out of 11-year-old systems to a lot of stress, but we got it done, and it kept them running. So with Sitel's recommendation, we came in and we virtualized, which is something that we had originally approved back in 2014 as well. But with Sitel's team on board, they definitely steered us in a correct direction. We basically replaced 5 servers and 2 battery backup systems from the rack. Just literally got to get yanked out, set aside. So that rack went from packed and hot, which we had problems with heat in the room, to 2 nice little boxes this tall. They are virtualized using VMware. They're basically bigger, better, faster, stronger, more expandable. There's not going to be a question of, gee, we need another server. You just walk up to a little box and say, give me another server. And it goes, okay. And it builds another server inside itself. So that's going to keep us very, very up to date for several years to come. We bought these servers all with full support. So we have 3 years of coverage, both in hardware and software. And I hope we maintain that, because it's going to be one of those critical things that we maintain the support on these products The reason we had so much problems with the older servers is they fell way out of support. They didn't even have parts for them anymore. So when they died, they died. Beyond that, I think really it went well. Sitel set up a great system for us in the VMware. I got a chance to get some education, thanks to Alan, to take care of the new software, and am very comfortable with that. We are using all modern server equipment now. It's a pleasure. It's like I can walk in the closet and go. I don't have to stress what I'm going to look at that day and say, is it running, or are the red lights blinking anywhere? So that's kind of my gist. It's just saying that, you know, we got rid of a bunch of old gear and we went from this to this, and it's so fascinating to see this to have more power, more expandability, more energy efficient, less heat, and will support us for a long time to come. So.
Early on, there was a mapping exercise with all of the cables and everything. Did that get completed with this virtualization and the modernization of the cabinet down there?
Yes. The color coding of the cables was something that Alan put me on immediately. So yeah, it just it kind of helps identify a little bit easier where some of this stuff is actually connected to. We're fortunate that our organization is not something like county where they've got rows and rows and rows of this stuff, but yeah, you can walk in and go, okay, that's going to be Wi-Fi, that's going to be to a desktop, just by their color. So I'm not too sure what else you'd like me to cover on that.
I think one important thing, and we've talked about this before, is to keep those warranties up to date. And then when a piece of equipment falls out of warranty, to just go ahead and replace it. That's Sitel's recommendation as an industry, is saying if the people that built it won't guarantee it any longer, they pretty much abandon it as well, and that's really your hint to move on to something else. And they say that's how you keep up to date and not fall behind and end up with deferred maintenance. So that's really our plan here. And a lot of these warranties will do 3 years and maybe a 1 or 2 year rollover after that. It seems that the industry will do. The other thing the industry's done is move to monthly payments on some charges. So we actually got just a special credit card for that we have to use, which is a little different way, the way they do business nowadays.
Cash flow for them.
Cash flow for them.
Yes, it's
more
new,
cash.
new business model. Rent
Right.
your software by the month.
Right.
We used to have servers offsite. I think it was Paulsville that we put them in. Do we still have that? Or?
No, the Paulsville server is now shut down. We're working with basically the Amazon cloud and can set our backups to the cloud.
Okay.
So if we, if one of these virtual servers is inoperable, does it automatically go to the next one?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, the power of these devices simply allow you to say, and the analogy is this little box has 4 servers on it, and it decides, I'm not going to run today. You just go to the little box below it and say, bring those 4 servers up. Now he's going to slow down a little bit because he's running 8, but services to the city will be nonstop while you work on why did this one decide to give you grief. Once it comes back alive, you just simply say, okay, you 4, go back up. And it's almost instant. It's a migration process that you literally click on server 1, 2, 3, and 4 and say, move here. And the users never even knew it. They're just typing away.
So who would know it is the IT department and Sitel who's monitoring the equipment. They're gonna get a message and they should call the city and say, we've noticed that, are you aware of this? Because that's what they're charged to do.
And then our actual backup is gonna be in the Amazon cloud.
Amazon Cloud.
Would there be any benefit to put some redundancy, say at Public Works or something like that, if something happened to this building, we're still up and running?
The joy of the software is, yes, redundancy is very straightforward with this. We could come up with almost any server out there, including a desktop if we wanted to, and bring everything we've got in the VM world up on it. rather quickly. So our disaster recovery capabilities just went through the roof compared to where we were. Are we prepared in it right now if this building went up in flames? Well, no, but again, I could go buy a server in a day and you'd be up and running in such a short time, where before
I
could
suspect
only-
with the backup in the cloud, it'd be pretty easy just
Yeah.
to rebuild from.
Yeah, and prior to this, I could have promised you maybe we'd be back online in as early as a week. So this is, like I say, this is a great stride forward for us.
Do we ever test that?
The system here being brand new, it's gonna be, it will get tested, but yeah.
You mean shut everything down and go to an outside server and go into the cloud?
I don't know if you have to shut it down, but, test it to make
Go,
sure
like,
that.
Go to a bank and go use their system to get into it, for example. I don't, we should ask Sitel.
That would be a good question. I've got a
That's a good Sitel question.
Yeah, I've got a possibility for us that might work, so.
I know at the bank, we did that annually.
Mhm.
We took our backup files, we took them to the off-site location that was our backup, and we made sure everything ran, and then we got the appropriate reports. And it was just an exercise we did.
And very good exercise, definitely.
Mhm.
Okay.
Steve?
Okay, so as Vince and Alan had mentioned, the goal is to keep kind of our hardware and software up to date so we don't get behind like we have in the past. So one of those parts of that was to get Office 365, which I'm sure you've had a little bit of interaction with recently as we switched over, but overall it was pretty simple switch over. We have a few glitches, but basically what that does for us is it keeps us current as far as our email server. So as before, we had one in-house, and every 3 years Microsoft would release a new version, so we got behind. Now this way it's Microsoft's task to keep it up to date and maintain it. And then the other option, or the other part of that, is then Microsoft Office software, we can keep up to date on that because we have a subscription for that. So everybody is, right now, everybody's on 2013, we'll be upgrading to 2016 soon, and then when the next version comes out, we'll be able to upgrade that up to that. So, so that's kind of the advantage of that. And then we've also implemented a workstation management program called LANDesk, and this was a recommendation by Sitel. So what that allows us to do is sort of monitor all our workstations, laptops, desktops, for health, keep them up to date with patches and Windows updates and things, and find out if there's problems. We can do quite a bit of maintenance and support remotely, so we don't have to be walking around or driving up to Public Works. And then it also just gives us kind of a visibility to what's going on overall in our network. So that's a nice feature, so you can kind of keep on top of things.
Is that done automatically, or do you have to physically look at his machine, his machine, and his machine?
It's all done automatically,
done.
and then we have a dashboard, if you will, a console that we can look at, and we can set it up so it'll give us alerts if some system is having problems, and so it gives us a visibility that we don't really have now.
What kind of problems would it identify and tell you about?
Let's say somebody's hard drive's getting full. It's like we can set that. Let's say it's more than 80% full, so eventually it's gonna slow their system down. So we'll be alerted to that. If it goes offline, we would know. Okay, they're having a problem. So there's a lot of variety of things that it would tell us about.
One of the things I'd like to interject is that we receive weekly reports of critical hacks, critical repairs. Adobe is full of them, Java is full of them, and the federal government releases these as flaws. This software brings it right up and says, there's a flaw, would you like me to send this fix out to all the workstations? And you can simply say, yes. Boom! The entire city has instantly got that flaw patched. So.
And then, as Vince and Alan alluded to, we're purchasing extended warranties on all hardware. Like when we buy Dell, they come with a 3-year warranty, but then in basically a workstation, figure a 3 to 5 year life. So we can extend, if we feel comfortable with the system, we can extend it another 2 years. But we'll have a replacement schedule following those guidelines. So we'll be replacing hardware as it gets down to the end of its warranty. So we don't have 6-year-old systems that are starting to fail. And I think that's pretty much it. Any questions?
The biennial budget has, I think, 4-year replacement cycle on all PCs here in City Hall is what we.
Yeah, and
budgeted for.
we're seeing a lot of changes there. For example, the mayor has a different setup now. I mean, you can see the idea, the big old desktop, you know, is really changing. You see, we all see that. And so we've tried to set this up so that we can adapt and, you know, keep current for what the employees want. One of the projects we're gonna move through is the 720 building. There's gonna be quite a bit of work, of course, setting up those workstations as well, and we've planned on that, been working with them on the setup. The other thing that's gonna, now that we've got some, after we do the 720 building, I'm hoping to have a review of the Public Works building itself, look at the speed of the internet out there, what we can do differently, and do some looking at as a big picture. What do the people in the field really need? You know, are we really supporting that up there like it should be? Because right now it's been kind of the porch stepchild really because of just keeping this up and running. So this is going to give us opportunity to look at that and decide what makes sense up there. So we've got some opportunities to do things that we didn't before. We'll have time to do the 720 building. We're going to review the Public Works building to see that all fits up there. And like Rob said, keep on the replacement schedule. But a lot of demands for different devices now and whatnot, telephones and you name it.
Or just something correlating, but, you know, we've thought in the past that our emergency operations center would be something that we would do at the shop out there at Public Works, and we've recently made a decision that we're going to put it at Station 31. They've got room for us. They've got some storage space for us. It's their secondary site, but it'll be our primary site up there at the fire station. We've got
Is that the one on Tremont?
Yes. It just makes more sense. This building, you know, in the big earthquake probably stands, but everything else around it isn't, and you probably can't get to it or operate from here. So it makes sense to be up there on that, you know, major corridor. Their primary site is right underneath a great big water tower. So that's why they've got that as a secondary site. In a cinder block building.
Oh, boy.
So we've got a grant. We had from Department of Emergency Management for $5,000 that we're going to put to work in some phone lines up there for our needs, some whiteboards, and then dry. There's a space down in the basement, but it can get wet at times, and in a storm event, but it will also put some shelving so that keeps our cases of computers and components related to the emergency operations center up off the ground, you know, so it won't get wet. So
And finally, I'd like to thank both these gentlemen for working. They worked some off hours, made themselves available to Sitel for excellent communications, and I just want to thank them formally that it was a job well done, so thank you.
Great, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Good deal.
It was.
I want to see out this way. There's various boards out there in front.
People with loaded weapons around there.
Yeah,
Thank you again.
What's in there?
board, interview boards for the police.
Oh,
Hiring a police officer, I believe.
Okay,
So,
we need to talk any more on the Tremont widening? We've done that.
just if you wanted, if, you know, call anytime if you need anything, and we'll continue to talk on that, and it's off to Clerk Reiners.
Okay,
So just wanted to let you guys know that we're working on the procurement policy. I've met with Cindy in Public Works and then Rebecca in Finance to sit down and go over the draft policies. So there's gonna be some changes, rearranging of the document that I handed out before. We really wanna take the auditor's comments to heart and put it into the document, make sure we have a really good working document. The draft didn't really address any contracting requirements, so we're gonna put some pieces in there that basically put some contract information, which is merging the two resolutions that we have in place now, which is the change order, and then there's the current procurement policy resolution that will hopefully get rid of those. We'll have one policy. It'll be easy for staff to pick up and read and follow.
When you present that, can you give a red line version
I'm
from
working on the red line, so it's
from the
gonna
last
look,
draft? Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna look a little messy, but you'll get a red line version from what was handed out to the council as to what the final one's gonna be. So I'm working on that. So our drafts are gonna be a little bit crazy, but you'll see one red line version from the beginning to the end and not all in between.
Is this an opportunity for us? Should we be revisiting, like, spending authorities or
Yes.
purchasing authorities?
Yes.
I mean, I think if we're gonna open that policy up, now would be the time to look at that
Yes.
stuff, 'cause based on discussions I've had with you, it's pretty antiquated.
It's pretty tight controls.
Do we wanna do that here?
Ken, I don't know what the current ones are.
Well, that's what I mean by
Right.
bringing current here
Right.
and what's being proposed, and we
Mark's
can.
10 or 15,000, and I'm 25,000.
Yeah, it's just,
And that's it
That's it.
for the whole city. Yeah, that's it. And then after that, it falls to RCWs. But RCW is very broad in saying that, you know, anything under, for public works project under $300,000, you can do, you know, whatever you want or whatever your policy states. Well, you can't do whatever you
I
want,
don't want
whatever your policy states.
300,000
Right,
into an authority.
right. I mean, you have to go to procurement and get bids and all of that, but basically anybody can write that check. So that's what we're going right now, is going through and saying, okay, what makes sense, what are our projects, what is the thing that's gonna stop somebody or a department from doing work if it was some sort of a, not an emergency as defined by RCW, but an emergency as defined by the city of Port Orchard. You know, what are those that's not gonna stop us? And then there's some other policies that state, okay, you can move forward with an emergency, but you do need to come back and get it ratified through the council. So there's some of the language in there that's gonna go into the policy. But absolutely, this is just
We're gonna have
a draft. It's gonna be presented to
Yeah.
the mayor, hopefully by the end of this week, early next week, then legal counsel, and then absolutely whatever the process we need to do to get it.
you know,
to you
your,
guys.
the amount is, and I'd throw this out, it's not the amount so much as the reporting back to the council that someone did a change order, I think, is probably, from a policy point of view. You know, you should have people in place that you trust to make the right decision based on the circumstances. They're supposed to understand that. But then what's the reporting mechanism back to say, here's the amount, here's what we did? So that you don't, say the number was 300,000, you would want to hear as you moved up and down that scale what it was, rather than get to the end and say, oh, I did a change order for 300. You see what I mean? So your policy, I think, would focus, from my point of view, on a reporting mechanism back to the policy people, as much as it would the amount that you're comfortable with having someone outside of the council make a decision. But I don't think the decisions that I've seen in the 8 years have ever been arbitrary decisions. They've been net by necessity.
Well, I think it would be valuable for everyone to revisit
Absolutely.
kind of that entire policy of,
Absolutely.
you know, my personal belief is the council is involved when we do the budget. It's in the budget, go forth and do good. But that may not be the same opinion of everybody, so revisiting that sort of thing. And how much authority for change orders and purchasing
I mean, how we
and
got
when they
where
have to go out to bid,
Yeah.
when they don't. I mean, that's stuff that I think would be valuable for everyone to, but I think revisiting those numbers to begin with is something we probably could do here and then take the whole proposed with changes that we're proposing to the council and the study session.
Is there a finance committee meeting scheduled between now and the 28th? Because we're gonna be adopting these on the 28th of March.
That's the goal, but let's do this.
You know, it's up to you. I mean, if you want to adopt something that's not gonna, well, whatever.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we get with Mark and say that this came up, because this has been talked about from time to time. Brandy and I and the four of us will get together, and we'll ask him what he sees that he needs in a change order, what he would propose number-wise.
Yeah.
And then we'll think about reporting-wise, and we'll write up a one-page what-if scenario and get out to you at least as soon as we can, and then we'll worry about to work it into it at some other point. But I think we want to get this started and get something in front of you all so you can see what we're talking. We'll give you what it is now and what a proposal would look like. I think that's what we should do.
Is there something sacred about the 28th? I mean, are you guys on a tight deadline to get
Well,
this done?
we're trying to meet that 90. Remember that last resolution of the year when I said we were going to clean this up within 90 days?
Oh, okay.
It all goes back to the meeting we had earlier in the month with the state auditor. So we're
we can
trying.
get this a good draft before you guys for the work study
Right.
session in March.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean that if we went over by a week or two that the auditor's gonna, come back. But that was our goal, was to get it done within the 90 days that we told them we would.
Would there be any value in, once we kind of have what we believe is the final draft for council approval, to kick it up back to the auditor and have them put their eyes on it one more time, just to
That would
show
be
that,
fine.
you know what I
You
mean?
bet. And they've offered to
We're
do
trying to
that.
meet their needs, and if they go, no, this is perfect, if you act under these, and that way if we did miss a couple of weeks,
That's
they know
it.
they're a part of the process.
We can do that. You bet they would go for that.
And on change order, is it typical that you do a number or can you do a percentage?
They do an.
The drafts that I've seen has all been numbers.
I've always seen numbers.
That was the same thing that was going through my mind, and then I thought, with Tremont, if you've got 18 million and
Right.
you've got a 10% change
Right.
order, all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
But conversely, if you've got a $10,000 project, like $1,000
Right.
bucks.
The other thing that I was thinking was in terms of, we don't want projects to get stalled waiting for
A
the
council meeting.
council to approve a change order. And I'm thinking Tremont, I'm
Pathway.
the pathway, but then I'm also thinking that we did some change orders on the DeKalb Pier that,
We did after the fact.
yeah, well, I was just thinking maybe decisions
Convene a
could,
special meeting.
maybe decisions could have been made differently on some of those change orders.
The purchasing and procurement and the bid process, that's black and white.
Exactly.
It's, changing conditions in, in happening in the field is what we need to be able to deal with
Right.
and fluidly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the classic is you're digging and you find a big rock, and nobody knew that it was gonna cost you $10,000 to move a rock. So
Right.
isn't that a change order that an engineer should be able to say,
Right.
Go forth.
Yeah. Move that rock.
Right.
The
rather
road's
than-
gotta go there.
rather than coming back? And those are really the true
Yeah.
change orders.
Right.
Not, I
Well,
forgot.
I'll do whatever.
Well, why
personally that
don't,
needs
well,
to be done.
that was my suggestion, I'll leave it
Yeah.
to however
Well,
you
and let's
want.
try to get, if we can, schedule another finance committee meeting so you guys get a blush at it.
Well, I don't necessarily think, that's
Okay.
the end of the world if we don't see it. I mean, just thinking that
Okay.
if we're going through a complete update of a policy, not just deal with Tremont, that's where the committee could be helpful, I think. But if it's something that you need to do for Tremont, bring it forward. It doesn't have to go through us, I would think.
But,
We'll work on something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do a policy paper and simply put, here's where we're at, and here's the parameters
Yeah.
for doing it, and then craft it into them, if you're comfortable with it.
And maybe that just comes to the work study in March,
I could.
ahead of
Sure.
adoption on the 28th. And maybe it
I
gets,
think that would be valuable, just to, depending upon how significant the changes are gonna be. It gives everybody an opportunity to at least throw their 2 cents in on it.
is that workable, Brad?
I'll make it.
25th?
Okay.
Yeah.
Council,
23rd.
Oh,
Council audio.
yes.
Audio.
That's me. So there's been some discussion that, as you're aware, that the work study session, microphones are a little hard to hear for the public during the actual meeting, and sometimes
It
on
affects
the
the
recording.
recording. Affects the recording too.
Right. So we felt that the handheld microphones project a lot more than the smaller ones that lay on the table. And so we sought a quote to see how much it would cost to get a few more microphones. Ideally, we would like to have 8, but I think that's maybe a little overboard. So our second number is 6. We have 1 now. We're hoping to purchase 5.
And the reason is 6 is the magic number. The box that we have in there, 6 is
Yeah.
what it holds.
So we can
So
get-
we'll max out the system.
So originally, we thought we could piecemeal it, get a couple more now, and a couple, maybe next year get a couple more. But when we got into this, the quote for just 3 microphones was around $4,200 plus some tax. And so I said, well, what's the quote for 5? And so it came back at a little over $5,500. So what, $1,300, $1,400, we can get 2 more microphones. We won't have to worry about the guys coming out, installing, adding it. So long story short, we think we can get it done within the budget already. We have some leftover of the what's it called, the council retreat facilitator. So we budgeted $3,000. That looks like it's coming in about $2,000. So we'll have an extra $1,000 there. And then the difference is a little over $300 that I think I can still absorb from the remainder of the budget that it's coming from. It's the council's budget. So I just want to make sure that the finance committee is comfortable with the proposal that we move forward.
And the
get
reason
microphones.
versus doing 2 or 3 microphones now and 2 or 3 later, about half of our cost or more was having these guys come out and program the equipment. And so just having them come once, program the equipment once, and we're done with
Makes
it.
sense.
So the microphones itself are anywhere from $400 to $600, depending on what kind of deal they can get of the day. So I just thought it was more beneficial to max out the system. Let's get the 6 microphones. Let's get those in place and see if we can get some more volume. for the
Do
public.
we have a feel, and personally I'm fine with this, but do we have a feel how many times our meetings are downloaded or viewed or whatever on the internet?
We can gather that. It's being posted on Facebook, or not Facebook, YouTube. So we can, I think, get the
Number of hits.
diagnostics or whatever it's called, this
Yeah.
reports from there.
You have a lot more viewers when the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts come.
Oh, I'm certain of that.
I know that's really how Chris and Bob, because I'll get a phone call the next day or 2 days later after the meeting, and from Chris or from Bob, they don't come to our meetings anymore. So we're doing, I think, a better job in what we're providing the public. I still get push from time to time to go back to BCAT. Bremerton puts theirs on BCAT, and some of the other cities
From
do.
who?
Oh, from BCAT.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
And there's folks that want, that think we should do that too. I think the internet is it's free and anybody can access it.
No, I agree. From that standpoint, it's a better deal, but I'm just curious of,
We can get that. We can get
Yeah, and I think
before, how
there's a
many.
report you can run on the website that says how many clicks go to this page. But keep in mind, the numbers may be skewed a little bit because a lot of staff does go and watch the videos for
Staff
for
watch.
Our
whatever
February
reasons. But
21st work study session had 11 views
from YouTube.
from YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and those are probably outside. The ones that we capture on the server, or we were, I don't know, under the new system, but mostly those were employees. And they were averaging around 16 to 30 a meeting on the big meetings.
Yeah, because Michelle will go back and watch
huge
it, or
volume.
Janine,
Heidi.
and that's how they do the minutes.
And
They
Heidi
go back and-
watches it. Well, Heidi will run through the finance stuff, and she does it. Rebecca will occasionally pick up things. So, and DCD staff looks at quite a bit of the comments that council members make at the meetings online.
I know, I personally listen to all of the council committee meetings. I do not look at our actual council meetings or our work study, and it's probably because I'm there.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you need a life back if you do.
Yeah, but I listen, I will put the recordings on and I listen to them because that's how I just feel like I'm better informed.
Sure.
But that's one.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So so you're right, it's not huge, but I think we have an obligation to the public to keep them informed if they want.
Yes.
You know, we're not doing anything in secret,
Definitely.
and.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with them like this. It's just sometimes you wonder, $5,000 for what? It'd be nice to know that it is
Yeah.
actually being utilized.
I mean, the
And if
alternative
11
was-
are doing it, great.
We can sit all at the dais for the work studies where we have better audio equipment, but, you know, it's supposed to be a less formal meeting and it's difficult to capture the There's three of us that project pretty well with our voices. There's others, Cindy in particular, you know, that need a microphone right in front of her because she's very soft-spoken.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Maybe
How about a
I
next
think you
meeting
got
date?
I think you got a head nod on that. Does the sound system work for the headphones? Is that?
Yes.
Ellen, do you have a,
The week, how's the week of the 27th look?
did we do Thursday the 30th?
Yep.
Back when it were.
I don't know.
Pencil
I
it
have
in.
no reason to think that it won't.
Well, then,
I
I
kind of like the meetings before the council meeting.
do too, but I have a commitment that
Okay.
morning on the 28th,
Okay.
and so does the mayor.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay. We'll do it on the 30th then,
Thank you.
7:30 here.
All right.
Yeah, those would foot to these numbers.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if that would just be more helpful to people to see
Mhm.
the,
That-
the larger impact versus all of the
Do
little
you want to officially
transfers.
adjourn the meeting?
Meeting is officially adjourned.